Hearing will come to order. Thank you all for your patience. It's inevitable that whenever this subcommittee has a hearing scheduled, that's when votes will be on the floor. It happens every single time. But I do appreciate y'all bearing with us. We will have votes again in roughly an hour and a half or so, so we'll need to move as expeditiously as we can. And with that in mind, I'm going to forego any opening statement, yield to the distinguished gentleman from Rhode Island for any comments he'd like to make.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just want to welcome our witnesses here today, and given the time concerns, I will follow your lead, Mr. Chairman. I will forego my opening statement. I'll submit it for the record.
Thank the gentleman. And without objection, all of your written statements will be made part of the record, and you'll all have a chance to summarize your comments, if you don't mind. And Ms. Schaefer, please lead off.
Thank you, sir. Chairman Thornberry?
Yeah. And if you get it right up to your mouth. Please.
Well, you know, it's always wonderful being the Chief Technology Officer of the Department and not knowing how to operate these things. Chairman Thornberry, Ranking Member Langevin, members of the committee, I am pleased to come before you today to testify about the fiscal year 2015 Department of Defense Science and Technology program. I am also proud to be here to represent the 100,000 scientists and engineers in the department, a workforce that has had remarkable achievements in the past, but is now a workforce showing the early stages of stress. The collective impact of the 2013 civilian furlough and program curtailment, the October 2013 government shutdown, and the indirect impacts of the sequester, such as restrictions on our young scientists and engineers attending technical conferences and reductions in hiring new scientists and engineers, has impacted the health of our workforce and the programs they execute in ways that we are just beginning to understand. We have begun to address these challenges and know we will defeat them, but they do remain a concern. The fiscal year 2015 budget request for science and technology is relatively stable. The DoD S&T request is $11.5 billion compared to a 2014 appropriation of $12 billion. The request represents a 4% decrease in the Department's S&T program compared to a flat RDT&E budget request. While we continue to execute a balanced program, there are factors that led Secretary Hagel to conclude in his February 24th fiscal year 2000 budget rollout that the development and proliferation of more advanced military technologies by other nations means that we are entering an era where American dominance on the seas, in the skies, and in space can no longer be taken for granted. The Department is in the third year of a protracted and rapid top-line and RDT&E budget drawdown. As highlighted by the Secretary, there are three major areas that compromise the Department's budget: force size, readiness, and modernization. The current budget is driving a force size reduction, but this reduction will take several years to yield significant savings. In the fiscal year 2015 budget, readiness and/or modernization will pay a larger percentage of this reduction bill. Our technological superiority is challenged by increasingly sophisticated military capabilities rapidly emerging around the globe. Within a fiscally constrained environment, our modernization efforts are focused on the enablers that keep our military equipment technologically superior to the emerging threat. Accordingly, we developed a strategy for the Research and Engineering program whereby we invest in research and engineering for three reasons. The first is to mitigate new and emerging threat capabilities. We see significant need in electronic warfare, cyber activities, counter weapons of mass destruction, and preserving space capabilities in a contested space environment. The second is to affordably enable new or extended capabilities in existing and new military platforms. We see significant need for systems engineers, modeling and simulation, and an expansion in prototyping efforts across the Department. The third reason we invest in research and engineering is to develop technology surprise. We see significant opportunities to advance our technologies in autonomy, human systems, quantum sensing, and big data. We have a balanced program that is yielding significant innovation across the DoD. DARPA continues to deliver new capabilities that will allow the DoD to stay technologically advanced, and Dr. Prabhakar will detail some of these programs. But we are also seeing groundbreaking capability developments in the services and agencies. Whether it's the first operational deployment of a laser system on the USS Ponce, or the development of the future helicopter in the Army's Joint Multi-Role Helicopter demonstration, or the first ever demonstration of an air-breathing hypersonic system such as accomplished by the Air Force's X-51 missile last year, the Department's S&T program continues to deliver. The last year has been challenging to the Department's S&T program. The risk to our force is growing, and the need for the science and technology community and delivery is likewise increasing. While the challenges are increasing, the Department as a whole recognizes the need to maintain technological superiority as a cornerstone of the future force. We still have the best military, defense industrial base, and laboratory and university research systems. However, instability and effects of the Budget Control Act and the near-term lack of balance between force structure, readiness, and modernization will increase the risk to our future force. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Ms. Miller.
Chairman Thornberry, Ranking Member Langevin, and distinguished members of the subcommittee, thank you for this opportunity to discuss the Army's Science and Technology Program for fiscal year 2015. After 13 years of persistent conflict, the United States finds itself in a familiar situation, facing a declining defense budget and a strategic landscape that continues to evolve. Given the budget downturn within the Department of Defense, the Army has been compelled to face some difficult choices. As Mr. Schaefer noted, we must balance between force structure, operational readiness, and modernization to maintain a capable force able to prevent, shape, and win any engagement. The Army will adapt, remaining an ever-present land force unparalleled throughout the world. As a result of these difficult budget decisions, however, we face a situation where modernization will be slowed over the next 5 years. New programs will not be initiated as originally envisioned, and the Army's science and technology enterprise will be challenged to better prepare for the programs and capabilities of the future. There is an old saying that my boss, Ms. Hsu, the Army Acquisition Executive, likes to use when explaining the Army's modernization strategy. The best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The second best time is today. And as we draw down forces from Afghanistan, today is the best time to plant seeds for the Army of the future. This is not a new concept. At the end of all major conflicts, we begin to focus on preparing for what's next. Perhaps the most successful example of planting future seeds is found at the end of the Vietnam conflict, where the Army focused on developing the Big Five: Abrams, Bradley, Black Hawk, Apache, and Patriot, platforms that still dominate the fight today. It is this mindset that led the Army leadership to protect our S&T investment, their seed corn for the future. Despite these great budget challenges, much trust has been placed in our Army S&T community. When I testified to this committee last year, I spoke about an initiative to generate a comprehensive modernization strategy that would facilitate informed strategic decisions based on long-term objectives within a resource-constrained environment. I am happy to report that this new process has been extremely beneficial for the Army, and is a process we have continued. The long-term look over the next 30 years was exceptionally powerful in facilitating the strategic decisions made within the Army as we built the fiscal year 15 President's budget. It allowed the Army leadership to make tough program decisions based on providing the most capability to our soldiers, knowing that in some cases that meant delaying desired capabilities. Last year, I also discussed the need for flexibility to balance across our investment portfolios. For fiscal year 15, we were allowed to do this. It made a critical difference in the Army strategy, allowing us to make a deliberate increase in our advanced technology demonstration funding, Budget Activity 3, from previous years. This is essential as the Army looks to its S&T community to conduct more technology demonstration and prototyping initiatives that will focus on maturing technology, reducing program risk, defining realistic requirements, and conducting experimentation with soldiers to both refine new capabilities and develop new operational concepts. The S&T community will be challenged to bring forward not only new capabilities, but capabilities that are affordable for the Army of the future. You will see that the Army S&T portfolio is increasing emphasis on research areas that support the next generation of combat vehicles, A2AD technologies such as assured position navigation and timing, soldier selection tools and training technologies, and long-range fires. We are also increasing vulnerability assessment investments, red teaming our technologies, our systems, and systems of systems to identify potential vulnerabilities, including performance degradation in contested environments, interoperability, adaptability, and training and ease of use. None of this would be possible without the world-class cadre of over 12,000 scientists and engineers that make up the Army Science and Technology enterprise. Despite this current environment of unease within the government civilian workforce, exacerbated over this past year, we continue to have an exceptional workforce. They are up to the challenge that the Army has given to them. This is an interesting yet challenging time to be in the Army. Despite this, we remain an Army that is looking towards the future while taking care of our soldiers today. I hope that we can continue to count on your support as we move forward. Thank you again for all that you do for our soldiers.
Thank you. Admiral.
Chairman Thornberry, Ranking Member Langevin, Subcommittee members, it's an honor to be here today to report on science and technology efforts in the Department of the Navy and discuss how the President's 2015 budget request supports the Navy and Marine Corps. We use science and technology to enable our Navy and Marine Corps team to maintain the technological edge necessary to prevail in any environment where we are called to defend U.S. interests. We work with the Secretary of the Navy, the Chief of Naval Operations, and the Commandant of the Marine Corps to balance the allocation of resources between near-term innovation and long-term leap-ahead research. Our goal is to improve our warfighting capability to counter increasingly complex threats in this uncertain environment, while at the same time addressing affordability in a serious way with our systems. Beginning with the evolution of current systems through incremental, spiral development of current technology, we move toward exploiting yet-to-be-discovered, disruptive, game-changing technologies. The Naval S&T strategic plan guides our investments and is regularly updated by Navy and Marine Corps leadership to validate alignment of S&T with current and future missions, priorities, and requirements. It ensures that S&T has long-term focus, meets near-term objectives, and makes what we do clear to decision-makers, partners, customers, and performers. The S&T plan that I just referred to is currently under review and will be updated in the very near future. We fully understand that anti-access area denial threats continue to increase. Cyber war challenges will also increase and become more complex. These problems are not easy to solve, but we're making progress. And as I said last year, we want to get away from using $3 million weapons to defeat $50,000 threats. We have weapons in development and being fielded here currently that will allow us to reverse that asymmetrical cost advantage currently held by some of our adversaries. These are not pie-in-the-sky science projects. These are being tested. They work. I invite you and your staffs to get hands-on experience and see them for yourselves. I know some of you have been down there already, but certainly at the Naval Surface Warfare Center at Dahlgren, the Naval Research Laboratory here in Anacostia, where our world-class scientists and civilian employees are making those things happen. The bottom line is we are constantly transitioning the results of discovery and invention, applied research into fielding prototype weapons and acquisition programs of record. We were commended for the way we do it by the 2013 Government Accountability Office report cited in my testimony. But it's not enough to build and transition effective systems. We need to be extremely affordable. An ongoing example of our success is the laser weapons system, part of our solid-state laser maturation effort. We feel energy weapons, specifically directed energy weapons, offer the Navy and the Marine Corps game-changing capabilities in speed of light engagement, deep magazines, multi-mission functionality, and affordable solutions. Laser weapons are very low engagement costs. Right now, we're literally under $1 per pulsed energy round, which is critical in our current fiscal environment. They are capable of defeating adversarial threats, including fast boats, UAVs, and other low-cost, widely available weapons. Now, our laser weapon system, again referred to as LAWS, leverages advances in commercial technology for use in a rugged, robust prototype weapon capable of identifying, illuminating, tracking, and lasing enemy surface and air threats. The Navy is installing this law system on board the USS Ponce in the Arabian Gulf this summer to be exact. That harsh and operationally important environment will provide an ideal opportunity to evaluate long-term system performance. We believe that LAWS has every potential for extraordinary success in terms of fielding an effective, affordable weapon for our sailors and Marines. An electromagnetic railgun is also similarly poised to provide game-changing disruptive capability for our long-range attack, ballistic missile, cruise missile defense, and anti-surface warfare against ships and small boats. Fired by electric pulse, railgun has the potential to launch projectiles over 110 nautical miles. With this projectile development underway and barrel life on a path to 1,000 shots, we feel very strong about this capability. Current research is focused on a repetition rate capability of multiple rounds per minute, which entails development of a tactical prototype barrel and pulse power system incorporating advanced cooling techniques. Developmental tests right now are ongoing at Naval Surface Warfare Center Dahlgren and at NRL, along with evaluation of the integration in new and existing naval platforms. And this might be new news, but the railgun testing, we're going to do that on board a JHSV Joint High-Speed Vessel in 2016. We will continue to duplicate these kinds of successes in other S&T areas with our innovative research and disruptive thinking, always trying to make our existing systems more effective and more affordable while improving transition to acquisition programs. Our research is exhilarating and unpredictable. We balance a range of complementary but competing research initiatives by supporting advances in established operational areas while sustaining far-reaching long-term efforts that provide disruptive operational concepts. Thank you again for your support, and I look forward to answering any of your questions.
Thank you. Dr. Walker?
Chairman Thornberry, Ranking Member Langevin, members of the subcommittee and staff, I'm pleased to have the opportunity to provide the testimony on the fiscal year 2015 Air Force Science and Technology Program. Globalization and the proliferation of technology mean we face threats across a wide spectrum and a competition across all domains. As stated by our Chief of Staff in the Global Vigilance, Global Reach, Global Power Vision, quote, despite the best analysis and projections by the national security experts, the time and the place of the next crisis are never certain and are rarely what we expect, unquote. Success and the guarantee of security in this dynamic environment require that we take lessons learned from the last decade of conflict and creatively visualize future strategic landscape. In this space, between the learning from the past and keeping an eye open on the future, is where we find opportunity in the S&T environment. Air Force scientists and engineers continue to evolve, advance game-changing and enabling technologies which will transform the landscape of how we fly, fight, and win against high-end threats in the contested environments. In close coordination with the requirements, intelligence, and acquisition communities, we have structured the Air Force 2015 Science and Technology Program to address the highest priority needs of the Air Force across the near, mid, and far term. Execute a balanced and integrated program that is responsive to the Air Force core missions and to advance technical competencies needed to address future research thrusts. Our forthcoming update to the Air Force S&T strategy focuses on investing in S&T for the future, as well as leveraging our organic capacity of our partners, both domestic and international, to integrating existing capabilities and to mature technologies into innovative, affordable, and sustained solutions. This flexible strategy provides us with the technological agility to adapt our S&T program to the dynamic, strategic, budgetary, and technology environments that will shape prioritized, actionable S&T plans of the future. It also guides our development of a strong STEM workforce and investment in our laboratory infrastructure to support the future research. The Air Force as a whole had to make difficult trades between the force structure, readiness, and modernization in the service's fiscal year 2015 President's budget submission to recover from the budget uncertainties that we've had over the past few years. The Air Force fiscal year 2015 budget request for S&T is approximately $2.1 billion. This year's S&T budget request represents a 6.2% decrease from our FY14 President's budget request. However, when you compare this to the overall RDT&E decrease the Air Force had to take in the balance, which was about 9%, The Air Force S&T actually fared very well in the Air Force planning and programming process. Our budget request rebalances basic research spending as part of the overall portfolio to increase emphasis on conducting technology demonstrations. It also emphasizes our efforts in game-changing technologies of hypersonics, autonomy, directed energy, and fuel-efficient propulsion technologies, which can affordably provide us necessary range, speed, and lethality for operations in highly contested environments, as outlined in the 2014 Quadrennial Defense Review. More information about these efforts and our investments in enabling technologies is described in my written statement provided for the record. In closing, I firmly believe that maintaining and even expanding our technological advantage is vital to ensuring the assured access and freedom of action in the air, space, and cyberspace. The focused and balanced investment in the Air Force fiscal year 2015 S&T program are hedges against an unpredictable future and provide pathways to a flexible, precise, and lethal force at a relatively low cost in relation to the return on the investment. On behalf of the dedicated scientists and engineers of the Air Force Science and Technology Enterprise, I want to thank you again for the opportunity to testify today, and thank you for your continued support of the Air Force S&T program.
Thank you. Dr. Prabhakar.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Langevin, and thanks to all of you for the chance to be here along with my colleagues today. DARPA is part of this DoD S&T community. We're also part of the larger national R&D ecosystem. Within those communities, DARPA has a particular role, and that role is to make the pivotal early investments that change what's possible so that we can take big steps forward in our national security capabilities. And that mission has not changed over our 5.5 decade history as an agency. But of course, the world that we're living in has changed in that period. So what's going on today, as you well know, today we face a very wide variety of national security threats. We're dealing with challenges from nation states, but also networked terrorism. All of those actors today have access to very powerful technologies around the world. And then here at home, we're watching the growing cost of our operational military systems, and that too poses a threat to our future security. So there's quite a lot on our plates. I'd like to just briefly mention work across 3 different areas in our portfolio to give you a sense for some of the things we're doing about these challenges. First, today we see that the classic approach to these complex military systems leads us to a place where these systems are so costly and inflexible that they're really not going to serve our needs for the next generation. So in the DARPA portfolio today, you'll find work that we're doing to come up with new techniques that are scalable approaches, for example, to dynamically controlling the electromagnetic spectrum. And you'll see work in new distributed cooperative effects that we think can be a powerful part of the next generation of air dominance. Just 2 examples across a broad set of things that we're doing in this big bin of rethinking complex military systems. In a second area, we can see the information revolution unfolding across every aspect of military operations. And today at DARPA, we're creating a new set of cybersecurity capabilities that will allow us to trust the information that we use. We're also inventing the new tools that let us get a handle on this explosion that's happening with data so that instead of drowning in the data, we can actually get deep insights out of all of that information out there. And then in a third area, we look at what's bubbling in research, and we see biology today starting to intersect with engineering, and in that research we're seeing the seeds of technological surprise. So part of our work at DARPA today is making the investments to create new capabilities in areas like synthetic biology and neurotechnology. So just a few examples of the things that we're doing today. I also just want to take a minute to talk with you about what it takes for us to do that work and to deliver on our mission. Your support across the board here has been critical. First, with respect to our people, we continue to use the 1101 flexible hiring authority that this committee has helped with the legislation on that starting a number of years ago. It's actually become critically important to our ability today to recruit the next set of people that have the potential to become great DARPA program managers. Secondly, let me turn to the budget. The President's budget request for DARPA in fiscal 15 is $2.9 billion. The backdrop for that number is that our budget declined about 20% in real terms between 09 and 13. That includes the 8% sequestration hit in fiscal 13. That downward slide stopped in fiscal 14, and we had a slight restoration. About half of the sequestration cut was restored in the 14 appropriations. I greatly appreciate the support from this committee. That was part of making that possible. It's making a real difference this fiscal year. The President's budget continues that very slight restoration process, bringing us almost back to where we were before the sequestration. So, again, I'll ask for your support of that request. Let me just end by saying that when I talk to our senior leaders in the Pentagon and here on Capitol Hill, I can see the weight of our national security challenges on them. I see that on you, and we all feel it ourselves. We do live in a volatile world. We all see the growth and the proliferation of threats. We're dealing with constrained resources. But I also know that American innovation has turned the tide time and again, and I'm confident that our efforts today can do that for the years to come as well. So thank you again for your support. We can't do that work without it, and I'm very happy to answer questions along with my colleagues.
Thank you. Innovation can turn the tide if we let it. On the other hand, sometimes we have a way of getting in the way of things. Mr. Langevin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to thank all of our witnesses for your testimony today and the just extraordinary and very important work that you're all doing. I've had the opportunity to meet with most of you pretty regularly, and I always appreciate the updates and the progress that you're making. So let me start with this. It's my understanding that the High Energy Laser Joint Technology Office budget was supposed to be restored in FY15 after a 2-year reduction directed to assist the Air Force hypersonics program. The FY15 budget does not reflect the restoration to approximately $68 million. Can you explain the rationale for this decision?
Yes, sir. I'll start, and I'll let Dr. Walker finish. A lot of it got caught up in the overall budget reductions in 15 that we had to deal with. But I don't look at the funding for high-energy lasers in a vacuum of one particular program at the Joint Technology Office, but rather in the totality. And we have had remarkable progress led not by the Joint Technology Office's money, but by their leadership in bringing together and knitting together the science and technology high-energy laser programs of the department. And I think it's significant that this office, working with each of our S&T execs and with DARPA, have knitted together an integrated science and technology program that has led to, as you heard from Admiral Klunder, the deployment of a 30-kilowatt laser on the USS Ponce this summer. It has led to the development of what will eventually be a 100-kilowatt, currently I think it's 10-kilowatt, Mary, high-energy laser mobile demonstrator for the Army that had a very, very successful demonstration at White Sands last December. I think it acquired somewhere around 88 out of 92 targets, something along that lines. The Air Force is working on developing packaging and sizing of high-energy lasers to go on their future fighter force to defend against incoming missiles. All of that was enabled by the Joint Technology Office, not the money that they had, but rather the leadership that they showed. And I'm very familiar with the people in that office. Whether it's 68 million or 50, they're going to continue to show the leadership. And our overall investment in science and technology and high-energy lasers across the department is relatively stable. We can get the numbers for you and provide those to you. But high-energy laser research is funded out of a number of programs in the Army, in the Navy, in the Air Force, and in DARPA. DARPA is doing remarkable things to drive up the efficiency of the electric lasers. Dave, do you want to add anything else to that?
No, what Mr. Schaefer says is exactly right. The program was funded to the level that we felt was necessary to continue the technology and support the joint services in developing lasers. However, the Air Force had budgetary pressures on it that didn't allow us to bring it back up to the full level that we wanted to. So everything took about a 6% reduction as we went through this FY15, with things returning as we move into 16 and beyond.
Well, let me ask the question a different way. Then, are we right-sized with our budget with respect to directed energy right now, or are we experiencing shortfalls that are hindering progress going forward on directed energy development of weapons?
Given the funding that's available, I believe the program is right size given the year that we're in right now.
Well, let me turn to some other area then, and I'm going to obviously follow this very closely. But I note that there were many mentions made in today's testimony on the need for robust STEM pipeline and the need to ensure that today's youth bring their talents to the national security arena. I find this hard to square with the proposed reduction in the National Defense Education Program to roughly half of its FY14 level. Can you elaborate on this decision, and can you provide an update on other relevant programs within the Department's purview, particularly those that reach K through 12 students?
Yes, sir. Regrettably, that program is mine. So let me first address your first question and the reduction in the National Defense Education Program. First, that program previously had been made up of 3 separate projects. The first funding K through 12 education across the department, and that was order of magnitude $12 to $15 million. It floated up and down. The second part of that program was a project called the National Science and Engineering Security Fellows Program. I made the decision to move that project from the office that it had been operated out of to our basic sciences office. The funding is still there. The project is still there. It's still doing the very same things. I just moved it from one program to another. The third part of NDEP is the Science, Mathematics, and Research for Transformation, or SMART program. That is our program for service for scholarship. Effectively, we pay for undergraduate and graduate degrees and then hire those people into our laboratories on a one-year scholarship paid basis. In FY15, we expect to have the same number of SMART scholars as we have in previous years. So we've had no reduction in that part of the program. I moved another part of the program to another program element. And now you asked about the K through 12. The administration made the decision to streamline federal education in certain areas. And part of that decision and part of that action was to move K through 12 funded efforts, with very few minor exceptions, to Department of Education. So the funding that had been allocated for the K through 12 part in the National Defense Education Program was reallocated in the FY15 budget to Department of Education. And that's the simple part of the story. We're still trying to go out and use our scientists and engineers to stay contacted through K through 12. We are supporting the America First science event at the Washington Convention Center in April. So we're still outreached on K through 12, but the bulk of the funding was moved to Department of Education, sir. And now I'll turn it over to my colleagues to talk about their parts.
So the Army was one of the exceptions. We did not lose our K through 12 Army Educational Outreach Program when they collected up the STEM programs and moved them out of the Department of Defense. And we find that it's been a very great value to the Army. It is doing outreach and preparing children to understand the needs and importance of STEM. We interact with our laboratories, give them mentors, and help bring them through that pipeline. We bring them into the laboratories where we can to give them opportunities to understand technology as it applies to the Army. But we know that even if they don't choose to ever work for the Army, they certainly are informed and help the Army when they go to industry itself. One of the things that we have done in our program and we believe helped to forestall it being taken away from the Department of Defense too is we've put in a process to have the quality of our program be assessed independently, and we do have a contract in place with Virginia Tech that does look at our program and establishes how well we are effectively reaching these younger students. So we are certainly a proponent of this, and we believe it's important for the workforce of the future.
Well, why was it okay for the Army to keep its program, but the areas of DOD, you've moved it out and to the Department of Education? My concern is that and I know I'm way over my time, and I'll yield back after this, but my concern is that DOD loses its focus on preparing the next generation and also leveraging the scientists and the capabilities that we have to really encourage our young people to go in this field and see that they're properly getting exposed to and educated in the sciences. I do think the DoD has a role to play. I guess this is certainly a policy decision, but I'm concerned by the move the department has made. And I'll stop there. And
Sir, I would just like to say that it was an administration decision. It came down to us. We saluted. We executed. But I believe the nation is well served by a Department of Defense that is in contact with our K through 12 students.
Thank you, Dr. Schaefer.
Mr. Nugent.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I really want to echo some of the statements that Mr. Langerman made, particularly in regards to, and I wasn't going to go in this area, but on the STEM issue, I really do believe that we're better served, not that Department of Education, I think it gets diluted. I think it's much more focused and much more directed in regards to what we're looking for the future, whether it's DARPA or any of the services as it relates to innovation. And I worry about innovation. I have 3 sons that serve this country. So our sons and daughters need all the things that you can design, develop to make it the battlefield safer for them, give them the opportunity to come home. And Admiral, I'm interested in all of you as it relates to directed energy. Mr. Langerman and I think are pretty big proponents of directed energy because of what you mentioned in regards to on the Ponce, in regards to actually testing and the ability to test and what it costs to test versus shooting a missile off at $1 million a copy versus $1. We see programs in the development stage, but then they tend to never make it to production, never make it to deployment. Where do we stand as it relates to that system on the Ponce in regards to the future?
Yes, sir. Thank you for the question. And I'll offer that it's really a conviction by our senior leadership in the Department of the Navy. And what I mean by that is that we want those new innovative systems to be in the hands of sailors and Marines. We want them to tell us, did we develop it right? Did we develop it and it needs to be tweaked a little bit? Or did we develop it and we just didn't do it right? And we'll bring it back. But the point there is you need to get a sailor or a Marine's hands on that thing and tell them, is it going to be effective in the warfighting environment, and will it be affordable? So the point I'd like to make, and thank you for your comments about innovation, we truly think that's the way this nation was built and is the way we get in front of our adversaries. We don't want to run with them. I don't want a sailor or Marine to ever go into a fair fight. I want them to always have the technological advantage, so we always win and defend our nation. What we've done this time on the Ponce that I think is very credible is I don't have a bunch of my scientists and my colleagues, we developed it, but I've got real sailors right down there at Dahlgren right now on the system. And it's not a singular laptop over in the corner somewhere. It's a fully integrated console with our fully integrated combat information system on that ship. So those young men and women on that detachment of sailors are going to go out there. They're going to test it. And indeed, we feel very comfortable because we've never missed so far. And that's one of the reasons why CNO Greenert said, Matt, get it out there. We've never missed. We feel confident, though, that we'd like to test it in that tough environment and see where it goes. And to the follow-on to the last bit of your question, I think regardless of the High Energy Laser Joint Technology Office, I can assure you that we've got all the resources positioned in the Navy and Marine Corps to put us in a good place when this test is done. And I'm not sure if you're familiar, but we also have a solid-state laser technology maturation program that takes it to a much higher power level, and that's in 16. So when we finish this test on Ponce, this demo with real sailors, and we finish up the prototyping at 16, we think we'll be very well positioned for follow-on long-term enduring efforts.
Well, and I just don't want us to, we can be in a testing mode forever.
Yes, sir.
I mean, I think you might agree with that. And I'd like to see us have at least a timeline as to when we want to have it operational. It goes back to CHAMP. Mr. Langerman and I have talked about that. It goes back to programs as it relates to the Army. And I know there's some collaboration between the Army and the Navy on those issues. And from my standpoint, I think that's great when you can get bright minds across the lines, across those services, to utilize that same information and make us all safer. So my question back to you then is, if after this test on the Ponce, if it meets the expectations, what would stand in your way of, if it's successful, in deploying that on other ships?
I would say nothing. Right now, we've already started the AOA on that process, that we're very familiar with the acquisition programs. We've already done all the blueprinting for the different classes of ships. So in many cases, if we are successful, we see this as a possible weapon system for a number of classes of our ships. And I think it's important, too, if I could just give my colleagues to my right here a great shout-out, because we're doing a test down in your great state here in just a few months, to do some joint Army-Navy testing down at Eglin. And so I think that, again, shows the collaborative effort we do on directed energy.
And I think that's commendable. And
Thanks.
It saves the taxpayers money, and it makes all of us safer in the long run. So, Mr. Chairman, I yield back, and thank you so very much for all of your help.
Ms. Davis.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you all for being here. I wonder, and certainly Director Prabhakar, if you could perhaps address this, what other governmental institutions of science, technology really support your efforts? And you talked about the intersection of biology and science. I'm thinking of the NIH, but I'm wondering as well of what else does that, or to what extent does the NIH?
I'm very happy to try to answer that question, because there's an answer for every aspect of our work. And let me start a little bit closer to home with much of what we do that goes directly into military systems. The folks at this table are the people that we work directly with. Our people are working together on a daily basis, because for a lot of those advanced technologies, we need to understand operational needs. We need to understand what's going on with R&D and S&T activities across the services. And then these are the people we end up working with to execute our programs and then to transition them. So that's one set of extremely important relationships. But you're absolutely right that all of us rely on this larger national ecosystem. In the biology area, which to me that is much more of a research field where we are just starting to find these new opportunities to build the kinds of technology capabilities that we need for national security. So it's a very different stage of maturity, but absolutely there, over and over again, whether it's work that we're doing on brain function research or on infectious disease, we find that we are building on top of the basic research that is almost always funded by the National Institutes of Health, sometimes by the National Science Foundation. There are many billions of research dollars that have laid that foundation. We want to come along and find the places where we can build national security capabilities on top of it.
Are there real differences about the way the labs produce in terms of the quality, the quantity of the research as well? How do the defense labs compare to other industrial, other labs that we have?
Yeah, to me the starting point is to recognize that it's an ecosystem, and all these different entities, the performers of the research and then the funders of the research, each have their own roles. So, just a simple example, I was visiting AFRL last September, And, our folks have been working together on a couple of hypersonics programs, but I got to see firsthand some of the unique capabilities in that laboratory, and that's exactly what you would expect, right? Where else would you expect to see fantastic hypersonics, leading-edge understanding of this incredibly important but very specialized technology? It should be at AFRL, and that's where you find it. But our work sometimes puts us in places where we want to be working directly with people in universities that are thinking about new ways to think about big data or some of these biology areas. Frequently, we need to tap into the small entrepreneurial community. For example, in cyber, it's pretty hard to think you're going to turn the corner on cyber issues without tapping into what's happening in this vibrant ecosystem of entrepreneurship. A lot of those people don't even think they're in the national security business, but they are important to us. So
absolutely.
we try to tap all of those.
Shut you off a little bit because I don't have very much time. Thank you.
All right.
I appreciate your response, but I think it's true. I mean, there is all this interaction, and I guess sometimes we tend to be less than supportive of some of those other efforts. And when it comes to the NIH, I think, again, as we're facing decisions, budget decisions, we know that there's a tremendous interaction, and you've spoken to that. Even in San Diego, they just formed the Cyber Center of Excellence. And I think that I would hope that we could look to those innovative, the energies really in communities that are doing great work. I want to mention just very briefly, because I think we talked a little bit about innovation, and the importance of that obviously is very critical, and the shift to the Department of Education. And I guess our job here too, there is the America Competes Act, something that should be reauthorized. It's sitting in the Science Committee and not going anywhere. So Mr. Chairman, I think this is a committee that really could have an opportunity to have a sense of what role can we play, how can we have some input into that, so that perhaps we can take a look and get something in that area moving that really does exactly what we're trying to do here. And I think from the response that nobody was probably, jumping for joy that some of that came out of the military. And yet, on the other hand, I think we have to make it, understandable and usable as well throughout the school districts of our country, and how we can create that intersection, I think, is going to be important. And the American Competes Act is certainly one way to do that, where we improve and really do the best practices in terms of STEM education. So thank you so much. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Mr. Schaefer, let me ask you, David Bartow with CSIS has made a point, and I want to see if you agree with it. His point is that in all previous military buildups, the R&D funding has gone up at least at the rate of the buildup, if not faster, so that when there's the inevitable decline after that, you've got this reservoir of R&D projects to draw upon. But he says since 9/11, we really didn't do that. The buildup went for intelligence and in operational things. We didn't have the big S&T R&D buildup. And so this drawdown is even tougher because we don't have a reservoir from which to draw. Do you think that's true?
To a partial extent, yes. I'd have to go back and check the numbers. I think historically, when we've been a nation at war, actually the operations and maintenance accounts have risen faster than R&D. But S&T has come up a little bit. This last war, we came up a little bit and then went flat. I think there's a more important point, and we're trying to make this across the department. And I think actually the best person who speaks about it is my boss, Undersecretary Kendall, and that is R&D is not a variable cost. So it takes the same amount of money to develop a new capability or a new weapon system, irregardless of the force size. So we have to start thinking as a department that stability in the long term in funding for S&T is more important than the wild fluctuations. And the 4% decline we had in FY15, I can't tell you I like it, but I understand why we got there. our job now is to protect against the out years, and how do we make sure that there's enough money to maintain a viable S&T program that delivers new capabilities for the future force?
Well, I think that's true. I just think it's interesting that, you know, I guess we're all glad that these accounts are not cut more than they are, but we shouldn't overestimate at the same time what comes of that. Let me back up kind of to what Ms. Davis was talking about and ask you all to respond briefly to this. As we've been talking about acquisition reform, obviously the swift pace of technology change is an enormous challenge. And actually, Dr. Prabhakar, you mentioned it earlier too, how quickly things change. I guess one of the things I'd like to know, just and within our limited time, just briefly, how do you, and I'll start with you and go backwards, how do you and your organization keep track of the technology change in research universities and in the private sector? Y'all were talking about cyber, for example, to make sure that that you are aware of those broader technology changes and then can pick and choose where DOD interests may benefit.
I don't have a magic answer for you on that, except to say that I view that as integral to the job of each of our technical program managers. And, you know, when they come on board, as you know, they only are with us for typically about 3 to 5 years. My deputy, Steve Walker, and I have a custom of doing a brown bag lunch with the newest batch of program managers, and we sit down and we talk with them. And one of the things we almost always talk about is how important it is to get out of your office in Arlington, Virginia, and go find what's happening in the technical arena, because there are people that know about us and they'll bring us their ideas, but that's not enough for us. We have to be getting out and seeing what else is happening, and it is usually either in universities, sometimes it's in the startup community, sometimes there'll be a skunk works tucked in the corner of a big established company, but you have to get out and visit people and see what they're thinking about in their labs and in their offices. And I don't really know how to do it other than retail, but I find it essential to what we do.
Okay, Dr. Walker.
Yeah, the AFOSR really has the mission in the Air Force of trying to reach out and find the best new ideas, not only in the U.S., but internationally as well. So having our offices spread across South America, Europe, and Asia allows us to reach out and find what are those good ideas and bring them into the U.S. for applications in the Air Force. In addition, within the U.S., the OSR program managers use their $6-1 to go out and try to find innovative technologies and new basic research that they're able to apply then to Air Force problems. So they use that as a seedling to move technology along. And as Dr. Prabhakar says, it has got to be an engagement. It's not a sit at home and hope people come to you. You've got to be out there visiting the people, seeing what the new ideas are, and bringing those forward. In addition, as we move into the more traditional directorates, they all maintain a basic research and early applied research capability where they're reaching out to academia and industry, trying to identify where are the best new ideas. In addition to that, looking at the small business and where through small business innovative research and other small business interactions that we have in the laboratory, really looking for those fresh new ideas, putting out the calls. A good example of this is in our both in our SIBRS calls and in our RIF calls. We've had 700-800 people responding to these calls with new ideas that we're able to then pick the best of them and try to bring them forward for technologies for the Air Force. So we've had great success, and we're trying to continue to keep that aperture open as possible to find the new innovative research that's going on out there.
Okay. Admiral, y'all ever go, as an addendum, y'all ever go out to venture capital community and see what they're investing?
Absolutely. As a matter of fact, I like to call myself the venture capitalist of the Navy and Marine Corps. But to that point, Mr. Chairman, I won't repeat what Dave said, my colleague in Arati, about the global look to our eyes and ears are always open around America. That's academia, that's industry, that's laboratories. We're always looking. As a matter of fact, I will offer to you the small grants, lots of seed corn, lots of petri dishes, The kind of things a young man or woman in academia can do for literally soda pop and pizza is unbelievable, specifically in the cyber domain that I know you're concerned about. Very small grants can be very, very beneficial for the team. And I also offer, so America, we look globally and we collaborate across all streams on these different offices. But something we have a distinct advantage too, and specifically on cyber, because I know, sir, you wait a year or two, you missed it. They've already flipped that technology on you and you're beat. So our point is that in the world that we can live in for Mr. Kendall, even in the 5,000 series acquisition document, we know it's pretty thick, we have the advantage that we can do user operational evaluation systems. What does that really mean? It means prototypes, specifically in cyber, on a defensive or offensive side, if it's in an operational context, but specifically defense. And can we indeed bring that tool quickly, develop it quickly, get it out and prototype it, see if it's going to be worthwhile, and then if we have to, we go back and buy a number of them through Mr. Kendall in that acquisition process. The point I'm trying to make is we can't wait that traditional timeline to do cyber work. We need to be able to get that technology developed out there in a year or two. And that's something I think we've been able to do in my world, specifically when I'm able to control my $6, $1, $2, and $3, sir.
How often do you do that?
I do that a lot. And I do it for the Navy and Marine Corps, and we also work across agencies and other ones involved, sir.
Okay.
Sir, like my colleagues, we have the Army Research Office that does our outreach to academia. They're always looking for those bright ideas that they can fund through our grants to our single investigator program. We also have the Army Research Lab, which has a considerable amount of basic research. They are people that work within the Army, understand how to leverage that technology that we find in academia and make it work on behalf of the Army. As my colleagues, we also have our international technology centers. Most of the time we're co-located, and we do that global outreach to watch what's out there. The Army has established a capability that they call it Global Tips Online, where we see things that are international, good ideas from a technology perspective, and we put it on a website so that our Army researchers and our program managers can have access to that and figure out how to leverage it in the program. And I can't underestimate the value of our subject matter experts being able to go to scientific conferences to exchange and good ideas and talk about where we are going in research and incite people to want to do that research on behalf of the military needs. And finally, I would say, and Mr. Schaefer may choose to talk about this, we also have the Defense Marketplace, which is a website that we allow industry to identify IRAD opportunities, the individual or independent research and development activities that they have ongoing that we can then leverage. And in fact, from a service perspective, we put out for industry what we're looking for, what capabilities we want for the future. All of this helps us to be able to leverage and find that research out there that we believe will be essentially important to the Army.
Sir, my colleagues have all, I think, covered most of the points. We do have the Defense Marketplace. 17% of our budget actually goes out to universities, and we're in contact with universities. But I'm not going to sit here and tell you that the picture is all rosy. As we went through the last year's budget and we had travel restrictions placed upon our people, and we did not allow our people, because of funding limitations, to go to technical conferences, we lost some contact. And we're just starting to understand the impact of that. We have to watch that. I have to watch that very closely and work every day to tell the story of why our people have to go out and be engaged, because that is a good business decision. But I will tell you, as we go through a budget drawdown, things like travel are always watched very closely, and my colleagues have to go ahead and justify virtually every trip our young people want to make. That limits us.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Langevin, you have a question?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So to our witnesses, I just want to just circle back to something I was going to raise in my opening statement, which I will now submit for the record. But there's been a steady crescendo of speculation about the coming wave of industry mergers and acquisitions. Are you confident in the Department's ability to maintain a competitive R&D environment even through a potential contraction? And how would R&D concerns be addressed within any larger oversight process?
I guess I'll start, but I will look for help from anybody at the table. I'm actually fairly comfortable that even if we have some contractions and mergers, that there will be industry to take up the effort. Now, I think that we may see a change. We may have to go to more of a mix of big company and small companies. But, you know, one thing that's wonderful about America, and we're all sitting here bemoaning the fact that budgets are tight. At the end of the day, we're spending $11.5 billion in science and technology and $63 billion in research and development to develop new systems. That's a lot of money, and that will create a lot of inducement for companies to stay in the game, and if there are mergers, for someone else to come in from outside. You know, the federal statutes are very, very clear that we have to compete whenever possible. We encourage competition. $63 billion will buy a lot of competition. So I'm not terribly worried yet. I haven't seen us get to the point, with very, very limited exceptions, of places where there isn't sufficient competition. We monitor it. One of my colleagues, Elena Breutman, who is the Deputy Assistant Secretary for Manufacturing and Industrial-Based Policy, monitors that on a daily basis. Concerned, but I don't see anything breaking yet. Would anybody like to add something?
So I'll just jump in there real briefly because I saw everybody put their hand up. But what I was going to say is one of the things that we are looking at trying to implement is more of an open architecture design on most of our new systems coming up. That open architecture itself allows for more competition. So instead of having a one industry taking, or one industrial contract taking place with one person to being the primary performer, we now have competition at the subsystem levels, and we maintain that competition, and that's something that we believe will help us in the future.
Okay. I'm going to stop there and go to my next question, if I could. Thank you for those answers. But in a recent Defense Science Board report from October of last year, titled Technology and Innovation Enablers for Superiority in 2030, the Board concluded that the opportunity for technological surprise is greatest for WMDs and expressed concern about the ability to detect signatures associated with weapons of mass destruction, given the advancement of technologies that would reduce or even eliminate some of the signatures that we depend on today. The impacts of such a technological shift would be extremely grave in many regards, and the Board proposed a particular course of action focusing on so-called big data techniques, expressing the need for the Department to both work with and ahead of commercial capabilities, but acknowledges the legal and privacy concerns associated with such an approach. Can you respond to that suggestion as well as the underlying concern?
Thank you. I think that DSB report put its finger on something that is, in fact, an important concern. The access that terrorist organizations, for example, have to all kinds of globally available technology, certainly including weapons of mass destruction, or the tools to create weapons of mass destruction. We recently started a program at DARPA that is specifically aiming to see what we can do with new technologies to try to counter those kinds of threats. I think they're very, very challenging threats. And I agree with the DSB's report, their comment about big data. I think that's a piece of the solution. The program that we've just launched is called Sigma, and it's attempting to change the detector technology, but also figure out the networking and the big data approaches that it's going to take to really put a complete solution together to try to get us to a somewhat more safe environment.
Mr. Chairman, that's something we could follow up on a briefing if we could. Thank you for that answer. Does anybody else have anything on that? Okay, then let me move to Dr. Walker and Dr. Schaefer. Last year, the Department of Defense completed a successful joint concept technology demonstration for the Counter-Electronics High-Powered Microwave Advanced Missile Project, or CHAMP. What plans are underway to continue this effort? What are the limitations of the current technology? And what issues might prevent wider fielding of these sorts of high-powered microwave weapons?
So the demonstration was really the first opportunity to go out and use a high-powered microwave from a cruise missile-size vehicle and show that it actually worked. However, it is still a large form factor for an aircraft. We really would like to get down to a smaller missile size. So the S&T side of the world is continuing to fund work on reducing the size of the device as well as to increase the power of the device to give you better penetration, longer distance standoff, as well as multiple shots out of a single cruise missile, really trying to get it down to a tactical missile form factor. In the meantime, in this year's budget request, the Air Force is requesting $5 million to initiate the analysis of alternatives on a non-kinetic weapon, which would be look at the CHAMP technology, the high-powered microwave technology, is one of the alternatives for how we go forward with a non-kinetic weapon in the future. The Air Force has got severe constrictions on its modernization dollars, given all the things we have in our bucket right now. However, this is important enough that we're going to continue moving forward, looking somewhere in the early 20s as an opportunity to transition this type of technology. The lab will continue developing the technology to ensure that when the Air Force is ready to move forward with the program, that we have a smaller size system ready to go forward and the technology up to a level that it's really ready to enter a acquisition program.
So some of this, though, is policy related, as I understand it, because some of the high-powered microwave technology is deployable right now, as I understand it, and there's been some resistance, particularly in the Army, as I understand it, to deploying some of that technology.
I can just say from the Air Force side, since we developed the anti-personnel high-powered microwave technology, that has been developed. It is available to go. It has been a policy decision not to deploy it so far. Hand that over to my colleagues.
So I will start and then let Ms. Miller talk. But I think it's very important to recognize that not all pulsed microwave or high-powered microwave are the same types of systems. CHAMP was an incredible success. The program that the Army is looking at was a tremendous success, but they're totally different technologies. One is very, very short pulse. The other is continuous wave. There are policy implications about deploying the ground-based high-powered microwave, and we're working through those. The CHAMP, I think, or the pulse microwave, we will have a weapon system sometime in the 2020s that will be exquisite, and no one else in the world will have it. But we do have to work the size and the thermal management of that system. But I think the really, this, I shouldn't sound like, I'm going to sound like a geek. I think it's really cool that we finally got to the point where we demonstrated a capability and are on a pathway to deliver what we all grew up with as kids, watching Buck Rogers employ.
Thank you. I just hope, and I'll yield back, Mr. Chairman, in just a second, but I just want to say I hope that the policy decisions will be worked through aggressively so that it's not the policy that's holding back the deployment of the technology, especially when it comes to keeping our troops safe, helping them be more effective, and again, keeping ultimately our country safer. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield back.
Well, I agree completely. And let me follow up. Who makes the policy decisions in this case? Is it the department's policy shop or someplace else? I mean, we have a technology, it's ready to be deployed. Policy decision says, no, don't deploy it. Who makes that decision? Where do these issues get worked out?
Sir, most of the time these things are led by our Undersecretary in Policy, and we negotiate. We have a number of types of technology areas where we have to think about the policy implications. Autonomous platforms.
Yeah, I'm just focused on this one as an example.
Can I take it for the record and get back to you? Because
yeah,
I don't have the exact.
If you don't mind, because I would, it is an issue in and of itself. If we have a technology that there is a decision not to deploy it, it's kind of hard to get our arms around exactly how that decision was made. But then it's also an example of some others that we may want to pursue. Let me see if I can get in two more things right quick before we go vote and y'all get to leave. All of this is about how much direct money investment we put into S&T. Obviously, we want the private sector to invest some of their own money in S&T along the way. Recently, the point was made to me that as long as we rely on lowest cost, technically acceptable contracts, there is zero incentive for the private sector to put any of their own research into it. They don't want to have any discriminators. All you want to do is be good enough and then just cut on the cost so that you win the contract. And so what that does in effect is discourage innovation and discourage the private sector from using their money to make improvements. Do you think that's true?
Sir, not only do I think it's true, it's one of the key principles and tenets under Mr. Kendall's Better Buying Power 2.0, and that is to better define the use of LPTA, low-price technically acceptable contracts. He believes it's okay to let those types of contracts for activities like mowing the base grass. It is not okay when you're going out and trying to compete a technically acceptable or technology contract. He's aware of that. We're driving that out through the services. It will take time for people to recognize that, but I believe we've already made the change to move away from LPTA for technology, high technology programs.
Anybody else have a brief comment on?
I'll just quickly say, Mr. Chairman, that if we're going to stay innovative and we're truly going to leap ahead of our threats and our adversaries, you've got to get the performance. So we look for obviously game-changing affordability pieces when we bring that technology in, but I absolutely will not corrupt a contract to go low cost if I can't achieve the performance you and I need to defend this country. So at the end of the day, that's what we got to have, and we do. So I promise you that our contracts, we look for the performance of the system first, then we'll look at how the affordability can come out and play in terms of our, I'm not talking about contracts, I'm talking about the cost effect of the system, sir.
I hear you. Okay.
Yeah, in the Air Force, one of the things we really focus on is that TA piece, that technically acceptable, is a critical portion of that contracting mechanism. We've been working hard on trying to re-energize our engineering enterprise so we bring that technical competence back so we can make that judgment so that we really make the right decision and get the technology that we want, not just the lowest cost. So it's, the two pieces have to go together, but it's not necessarily the best contracting vehicle for technology.
Yeah, that word about acceptable means you just kind of get good enough. I mean, that's what I hear, rather than, oh, maybe a little bit more, you can, but something we may want to pursue. All right, let me ask this. If you could invest in only one technology program, one area of technology, one issue area, and within your service or y'all have broader leeway, obviously, what would it be? You have to narrow it down, and right now you can only invest in one. Ma'am?
I'd invest in materials.
Really?
I would. I would tell you that the need to have new lightweight materials, affordable materials that can help us both in getting our power and energy uses down, getting our armor weights down, bringing down the soldier load. I mean, it's kind of full spectrum. It covers and is the underpinning of a lot of what we do. So I would say, for me, that's a big investment area.
It's interesting. Thank you.
Well, Mr. Chairman, since I've already invested heavily in directed energy and railgun and undersea domain, I will tell you that the electromagnetic spectrum is the new one that we're working very hard on, sir, to make sure we understand with my colleagues at DARPA on how, and my other colleagues, how we can absolutely optimize that.
Okay.
Since the Army's investing in materials and we got the electromagnetic spectrum covered, I would keep the investment in hypersonics as a key game-changing technology that we really need to move forward.
Really? Some people think that's not going to go anywhere. But if you had, the Air Force had one area to invest in for S&T, that's what it would be.
For given right now where we are, we're on the cusp of a breakthrough.
Okay.
Following X-51, I think there's a real opportunity to change warfighting with hypersonic capabilities.
Interesting. Dr. Prabhakar?
Mr. Chairman, I'm going to give you a DARPA answer, which is that if we only invest in one, we're just not going to get there, because the problems that we're dealing with are actually too complex for any one silver bullet. And I think rethinking the entire systems approach is actually going to be central to this next generation of advanced military capabilities.
Which may be an area in and of itself in which to invest. I mean, we talk about, for example, with terrorism, we talk about fighting a network with a network. We have to understand networks better in order to do that, and that's it. It's not what we traditionally think of as investment in S&T, but maybe that is, one.
You're completely right, and you're going to need all of these other pieces so that you got the pieces.
I know you're right about that, but it's interesting itself. Ms. Shaver, you got one?
I actually do. I agree with Arati. I agree with all my colleagues, but I'm a simple guy. At the end of the day, our business is in defense of the homeland. I am more concerned about what can happen to the homeland through a cyber attack launched against the U.S. I would defend or invest in cyber above all else, just because of the potential gravity of that attack.
Yeah. Fair point. All good answers. Thank you all very much for being here, for what you and your folks do for the country. With that, the hearing's adjourned.